week 6 of the fantasy football season. And here's the top 12 defense DST units I'm ranking this week. The first one, the Los Angeles Rams. So the Rams here, they've been a disappointment, no doubt about it, this season for fantasy football. But this week here, they got a great matchup versus the Carolina Panthers with P.J. Walker as their starting quarterback, even though Baker Mayfield wasn't doing anything anyway. But right now, I know they've been a disappointment. Last week, you thought they would do a little bit more versus Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys with 16 points allowed and 3 sacks. So this week here, if they can't perform and put up big numbers versus P.J. Walker at this point, then they're a droppable defense, especially with the bye in week 7. But this week here, I think Aaron Donald's going to make a few plays. I think Jalen Ramsey's going to make a few plays. And this defense is due to have a big game. And with P.J. Walker starting at quarterback, I think it happens this week. And I got the Rams in number 1. Number 2, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this Buc team has a solid defense, no doubt about it. And they've been playing pretty good defense, even though I know the fantasy numbers haven't translated. But they still keep their opponents to low scoring, besides, obviously, Kansas City in week 4, where they scored 41 points versus them. But right here, great matchup at Pittsburgh. Gives up the ninth most fantasy points to defenses on the season. And Kenny Pickett, in his second career start, I don't expect them to do much versus this Tampa Bay defense. And this Tampa team trying to get back on track after losing that tough one to Kansas City. I know they won last week, but it was a little bit of a scare at the end of the game. But right here, Todd Bowles preaches defense. And this week here, Kenny Pickett is going to be in for a long day. And I like Tampa Bay at number 2. Number 3, San Francisco 49ers. So this Niner team, they've been feasting on the defensive end over the last few weeks, finding the end zone and just holding their opponents down. The last 2 weeks here, especially week 4 versus the Rams, 9 points allowed, 7 sacks, a pick-6 fumble recovery. And week 5 at Carolina, Baker Mayfield, they banged him up in that ball game. And now he's out a few weeks with a high ankle sprain. 15 points allowed, 6 sacks, another pick-6 in that one. And right here, they're just playing great football. In week 6 here, Marcus Mariota, he's going to have a tough ball game in this one. I think they're going to do the same to Mariota like they did to Baker. They're going to make him have a tough time. They're going to get some licks on him. And this is what this defense has been doing for years here is San Francisco. Have a decent offense, conservative offense at times, and then just the defense takes over and wins ball games. And this week here in Atlanta, they're going to do that once again. I got them at 3. Number 4, the New England Patriots. So the Patriots are starting to find their way on defense, when last season they were one of the top teams and turning the football over and making plays. So the last 2 weeks especially, they've been doing that as New England. So right here, week 4 at Green Bay, 27 points allowed, a sack and into fumble recovery, pick-6. And then week 5 versus Detroit, they pitched a shutout in that one with 2 sacks and a pick-6 and a fumble recovery. So right here, I know Cleveland's offense has been playing good. Nick Chubb, Brissett's been pretty solid. Njoku's been solid. Amari Cooper. But remember, Brissett was with the Patriots, I know, many seasons ago, but they still know his tendencies. Belichick, has got a good scouting report on him. And this defense, they're starting to get things going and trying to win games like they usually have over the last couple years since Brady left. We're running the football and playing defense. And this week here, I think they have a great performance at this Cleveland Brown team in the dog pound. Number 5, the Green Bay Packers. A lot of people down on the Green Bay Packers after having a bad performance versus a pretty limited offense besides Saquon Barkley in the New York Giants with all the injuries, giving up 27 points with only a sack and a safety. But week 6 here, they versus Zach Wilson and the New York Jets. And the Jets here, their offense hasn't looked all that great, in my opinion. Besides Breece Hall, since Zach Wilson stepped in, Garrett Wilson's numbers went down. Tyler Conklin, his numbers have went down. Corey Davis had one big game, and Elijah Moore's been a non-factor. So right here, if this Packer team could zero in on stopping Breece Hall in this ball game, I think this team's going to have a good game, and they're going to be a team to be reckoned with, is this Packer defense. They got good pass rushers, secondary solidified, and I think this week after a tough loss and a choke job versus the Giants, this defense gets back on track, and I got them at 5. Number 6, the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts here, they're just a weird defense, but if they could get Leonard back this week, that's a big part to this defense. And this Jacksonville offense the last 2 weeks have done nothing. Trevor Lawrence, he looked great the first 3 weeks like he was turning the corner. And now the last 2 weeks he's regressed. So I think this defense can make a few plays. They had a great game in week 5 at Denver, even though that was one of the worst football games you possibly could see. 9 points allowed, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a block kick. So right now Jacksonville, Their offense is struggling the last 2 weeks here. Trevor Lawrence, he's been turning the football over with 7 turnovers, I believe, in the last 2 ball games. And right here, I think the Colts could get a few turnovers in this game. They play better at home, which is a home game for them. And if Leonard comes back, that's just cherry on top for this defense. And I got them in number 6, number 7, the Baltimore Ravens. So this Raven defense, I know they got problems in the secondary, especially in that game versus the Miami Dolphins in week 2. But right now, they're starting to get things going, and they're starting to hold opponents down. Week 4, I knew they blew the ball game, but to only give 23 points up to Josh Allen and that high-powered Buffalo offense is a victory in itself, in my opinion. 23 points allowed, a sack, and into fumble recovery. And then week 5 versus division rival, the Bengals, 17 points allowed, 3 sacks, and an into. So right here, week 6, they go to the New York Giants. Offense is pretty limited, like I mentioned earlier in the video. And right now, if they could stop Saquon Barkley, zero in on him, and make Daniel Jones try to beat him, that'll be a plus, because right now, he don't really have any weapons on the offense. Tani, we don't know if he's going to play. Even if he does, he'll probably be in a limited role. Robinson's a rookie. They're hoping to get him back on the field, but we'll see if he plays. And then if they don't play, that leaves them to Darius Slayton and Richie James Jr. as his main options, because Kenny Golladay banged up as well, and Daniel Bellinger at tight end. So right now, if this Raven defense could go into New York, stop the running game, take Barkley out for the most part, or at least limit him, I think they could get a few plays on Daniel Jones. They could get a few interceptions possibly, and they're starting to play a little bit better, like I said, the last couple weeks versus pretty solid offenses, where this Giant offense obviously isn't better than Buffalo or Cincinnati. So this week I like them at 7. Number 8, Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings, this is just a matchup-based type of thing here for me with Minnesota, with going to the Miami Dolphins, back in rookie 7th rounder, Skylar Thompson in this game. I know Thompson's got good weapons, but last week this New York Jet defense really did them in the ball game. So I know this Minnesota defense hasn't been performing at all this season. The last few games, they've pretty much done nothing. Week 4 at New Orleans, 6 fantasy points. And week 5 versus the Bears in that one, 4. So right here, if Thompson's a start, this defense is number 8, in my opinion. They could get to the quarterback. I know the secondary ain't all that great, especially when you got to deal with a Tyreek Hill and a Waddle, but it's got to do more with Skylar Thompson start. I got him at 8. Number 9, the Philadelphia Eagles. So this Eagle unit, one of the best defenses in all pro football. But this Dallas Cowboy team, for whatever reason, it don't matter what defense they verse. Cooper Rush has been cool, calm, and collective, not turning the ball over, not really taking sacks. And the Cowboys give up the 6th least amount of fantasy points to defenses on the season. So the Eagles, they've gone out there from week 2 to 4 with monster fantasy games in double digits in every ball game. And then week 5 at Arizona, they didn't really do much. 17 points allowed, a sack and an into. So right here on Sunday Night Football in a division game in the NFC East for first place early in the season here, the Philadelphia Eagles, they got a great matchup, but this Cowboy offense, like I said, they've been playing smart football. Offensive line's been improving with some youngsters and changes. And obviously the injury to Tyron Smith. And Cooper Rush, he's a guy that's playing great football, game manager, not turning it over. But the Eagles, I think, could get a few sacks on him. But I'm not expecting a double-digit game this week. So I got him at number 9. Number 10, the Washington Commanders. So this is definitely a matchup-based type of thing here for me with the Commanders. What a great matchup on Thursday Night Football here tonight at the Chicago Bears. This Bear offense, one of the worst teams in the league. I know, surprisingly, they've only given up the 12th most fantasy points to DST units. But the problem here with the Commanders, they don't really have a pass rush with Chase Young, who's been out pretty much the whole season. And the secondary isn't great in coverage. But this week here, the Bears really don't have wide receivers. Darnell Mooney hasn't done anything this season. Quarius St. Brown, he showed some flashes, but he's not really a number 2 wide receiver. And Justin Fields, he's just not a good quarterback. So right here, if you're in a league where you need a defense this week off the wire, Commanders are still out there in tons of fantasy leagues, and I think they're serviceable tonight at the Chicago Bears. 11, the Dallas Cowboys. So the Cowboys here last week, I didn't have them in the top 12 because I didn't think they could do much versus the Los Angeles Rams. But I was wrong in that ball game, and they had a monster game in fantasy. 10 points allowed, 5 sacks, and into a scoop and score by DeMarcus Lawrence, and 2 fumble recoveries with a block kick. So right here, this Philly offense is dynamic. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders. And it's a division rival, but I think this Cowboy team, And Philly, this is going to be a grinded out type of game. Low 20s, maybe even teens in this one, where I know the Cowboys will get to Hurts a few times. Micah Parsons, he's quickly becoming one of the best defensive players in all of pro football. And even DeMarcus Lawrence this season, he's looked better than he has in the last few seasons, getting to the quarterback and being around the ball. So Dan Quinn has this defense playing quick. He has them getting to the quarterback looking good. And this week here, even versus one of the better offenses in all pro football, I got the Cowboys this week at number 11, and the 12th and final defense I'm ranking this week is the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Jaguars were a major pickup in week 5 on the waiver wire, but they didn't have a huge game. The weak Houston Texan offense was the Jaguar defense after coming off 3 great performances with double-digit fantasy points. But this week here, good matchup at the Indianapolis Colts, who give up the second most fantasy points to defenses on the season. And right here, the thing is, this Colt offensive line has been moving parts all season long, different guys in different spots, injuries, and Matt Ryan, he just hasn't looked good. Michael Pittman, he's not getting the football, he's not getting the job done, but it's got a major thing to do with the offensive line, obviously, not giving him protection and not giving him time. Jonathan Taylor, we don't know if he's going to play in this game at all, obviously, because he's injured and missed last week's game, but I still think Taylor's going to play. But like I said, the Jaguars have been playing good football on defense. And going back to the Week 2 ball game versus Indianapolis, 5 sacks, a shutout, 3 interceptions. So they had 28 fantasy points in that ball game. So right here, Jacksonville with a good track record this season versus Indianapolis in their first meeting. And with Indianapolis offensive line issues, I got Jacksonville at number 12. So that's the top 12 defense DST units I'm ranking here for Week 6 of the fantasy football season.